Today we have a teacher who gets a student who knows more than she does and gets petty enough to try to fail them. Without further ado, let's get cracking. Show them your documents. They will see you deserve no better. Okay, I will show all my documents. To give context, I live in Europe, in a non-Anglophone country. I have always been a language nerd, and since my parents' divorce, English and everything in it, music, movies, internet, was my escape. So I was fluent before most of my classmates and got my CPE, Certificate of Proficiency in English, the highest certificate from Cambridge Council, at 18. In my country, high schools are basically undergrad college and are finished between the ages of 19 and 20. And a problem which almost all public schools have is terrible language teachers. Most of them being former Russian teachers with minimal English or any other language education. Also, as my country is small and nobody could reasonably expect to use our language abroad, we put huge emphasis on language studies at all levels of education, and it is often the thing that which schools boast about to become prestigious. So enough context. From early on, my last high school English teacher and I kicked it off to a bad start. The first test she gave us came back all red because of words which are not in the textbook. The terrible teacher, TT for short, would do this to me for the full final 2 years. She would take my essays and tests and cross out any word, phrase, or structure which was not in the textbooks we were using. I maintain that I will not go as far as to learn the textbook vocabulary by heart, just to remember which synonyms I was allowed to use, just because of TT's antics. I have managed to keep an A for 3 terms because there was nothing she could mark down on my grammar. The final term, however, TT learned that I wished to go to university to do Anglophone studies, a specialization her daughter had failed to be accepted for. She told me that as an explanation as to why I cannot ever hope to be accepted at the start of that term, and which, among a dozen other things, required good or even perfect marks from high school language lessons and accepted only 5% of applicants. TT was dead set to make me fail. She started giving me the stupidest assignments and extra tests for misbehaving in class, being finished early and silently staring at a wall, which required me to mark the exact position of Disneyland on this A4 blind map of USA. Exact quote I still remember after all those years. And more of the same. You could tell she was so satisfied by me failing these tests, she would have a grin on her face each time handing out the results. By this time, I had been representing the school in Language Olympics for both English and Spanish. She had no idea, because it was organized by another language teacher, and even though the principal made it into a big deal, TT was plainly uninterested. I had placed 3rd in the capital city district in Spanish and 6th nationwide in English. Not listing this to brag, okay, maybe a little bit, but to use it later. By the end of the term, she got my mark down to a C-. Mind you, all the grammar was still A's, but her blind maps of tourist attractions had taken their toll. I went to her to reason with her, but her reaction was, if you think a different teacher would propose a different mark, take all of your documents and go to one of my colleagues. But I believe it is clear to anyone that you do not deserve any better. So I did. I took all my documents, the blind maps, the grammar test, my by then a year-old PCE certificate, and my 6th place diploma. I went to the teacher who organized the competitions and explained my situation. She was furious. She took this to the principal, and even though I was waiting outside, I could hear him yell at TT, "You're trying to fail the student who was representing us at the national level of competitions?" It also turned out that with the CPE I had, by that time, a higher level of English education than TT had. I got my A. I got to the uni, and I love it there. I also started my own tiny language school where, among of course teaching the language to whoever is interested, I help kids who language teachers are incompetent and/or power-hungry morons. The impulse for me to write this was walking by the high school last week and meeting TT. She acted like we have always been best buddies. A couple of my students are her students as well, so she knows about me. She hugged me in front of the high school kids present and explained that I got where I was thanks to the hard work in her lessons. I am still that I didn't get the courage to tell her off there and then. Okay guys, we need to really talk about this situation. We have a teacher who uses her authority as a weapon to inflict what she believes is justice in her world. She thinks to herself, I don't like how this student is too advanced, so I'm just going to punish them for it. The student then has to dumb themselves down for the work to get an A. The student later reveals their career path to the teacher, who knows how competitive it is, and instead of supporting the student like a normal teacher, she tries to sabotage the student's chances with extra ridiculous punishment tests, which that's just absurd, especially because it's for finishing their work early. This is an insane environment to be in, and on top of that, the student was already dealing with the parents divorcing, which typically would impact the student's academic career. And then you have this teacher who's trying to get away with ruining a student's career. I don't know about you, but that's pretty much the opposite of what I think a teacher should do. Let alone the teacher was purposely holding the student back by coming up with arbitrary rules that were only to make the teacher feel superior. She wasn't even aware of the student's achievements on the national level. She felt that her child should have gotten the career that the student had, and so she took her petty revenge. I'm just glad that this backfired, but to me, it didn't backfire enough. The teacher learned nothing and is now taking credit for the student's success. How twisted do you have to be that you hated a student enough to try to fail them and then turn around and act like you made the student a success? There is something definitely wrong with that teacher. I got secondhand frustration from the story, and I can only be glad that the student is doing exactly what they love and made it through all of this. But I still have that issue in the back of my head, just thinking about what other students might have run into with similar problems with not so good endings. It's important to bring people up and celebrate success because you don't know what others might be going through. Everyone has trials and tribulations, but in the end, we need to have hope in order to succeed in what we care about. So with that, I ask you to share this with students that you know who are graduating and even those who aren't. If you want to help me out, then please leave a like. It goes much farther than you think. Please also subscribe and ding that notification bell to be the first to get more content like this. As always, thanks for your support, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.